Faces of Abortion is the only television program of its kind that shares the powerful, real-life stories of women, men, and families who have suffered through the destruction of abortion. You will be hearing powerful stories from women and men and families throughout the nations. Faces of Abortion touches lives and changes hearts in over 115 nations. You will also be given practical steps on how you can end abortion.
So it just overwhelmed me. And I thought the only way to escape the pain was to take my life.
I had a fear that I wouldn't be able to have my own children.
It brings heartache. It brings hurt.
And I knew they were tearing my baby apart.
I remember the cold feeling of the room.
I remember laying there and I just said to myself that I will never forgive myself for what I'm doing.
I believe that my life was spared that night just so that I could be here right now and say abortion hurts women.
Welcome to Faces of Abortion. I'm your host, Cindy Collins, and I'd like to introduce my co-host, Alan Parker, who is president of the Justice Foundation, and Clayton Trotter, who is general counsel of the Justice Foundation, and our special studio guest, Julie.
Cindy, this week I'm very excited about the program. We're going to hear from Ann and Julie about some things about abortion that most people never think of or even imagine being consequences of abortion.
That's right, Alan. Let's go listen to Ann's story right now in her own words.
27 years ago, when I had just turned 17, I was beginning my senior year in high school, I found out that I was pregnant. That was one of the most frightening times in my entire life. I was filled with fear and guilt and shame, so much so that I couldn't go to an adult for any counseling. Instead, I turned toward my boyfriend of 3 years and a girlfriend. That resulted in me making the decision to have an abortion. My boyfriend helped in the sense that he drove the 2 hours for us to get to that abortion facility. I paid the bill. 2 days later, he broke up with me. It was a challenge. I thought my senior year was supposed to be filled with spending time with people and looking forward to my future. But that beginning of my senior year, I was hemorrhaging so badly, and I never understood why after the abortion. I couldn't understand. I thought maybe that was normal, but because it was such a long drive from there, I knew I couldn't call because it was long distance and no one knew. It was a small town, and I didn't want anyone to know. So I lost a lot of weight, and I developed some pretty severe respiratory disorders, even though I never smoked a single cigarette in my life. So it was a challenge that senior year. It was a challenge not to let my parents find out, and it was a challenge. My health was a challenge for me in those days as well. And after senior year, my parents did find out. They found out from a note that another girl from the high school left, wanting to know all the details of that. How much did it cost? Where did you have it done? Did it hurt a lot? My parents found out, and luckily for me, I wasn't quite 18 because they wanted to kick me out of the house. So luckily for me, I was ready to leave. I was ready to leave when I graduated from high school, and I went as far as I could. I left for college, and I will let you know that in college I had a lot of unhealthy relationships in college, and it took many more years before I finally became able to have a healthy relationship, and one that I was able to get married. So we got married and we moved to California, and I brought home our first baby, and something the abortion facility never told me was that I would not know how to bond with this baby. We sat there many hours away from home, and I didn't know what to do with this baby in my arms. I didn't know how to hold her. I didn't know how to bathe her. I didn't know how to dress her. I didn't know how to feed her. I felt like I was one of the most inept parents there ever was. I can't tell you how unbearable that was. And I never understood that so many years before that a decision that I had made to have an abortion was going to affect the relationship that I had with this newborn in my arms. Luckily for her, her dad was more nurturing than I was. So she was able to get the attention, just not from her mother. And I didn't know it was that. I just thought I was an incompetent person. Years went by before I began to realize that that was an after effect of abortion. I had no idea. It's been a process that I've had to go through. First, I had to learn that Jesus forgave me. But for me, that wasn't quite enough yet. I had to learn to forgive myself. And in that process, I went through Bible studies. One was in particularly a very important one for me. It was from a local area crisis pregnancy center, and it was called Forgiven and Set Free. That was a Bible study that spoke to me more than anything I've ever heard since. What it said was that Jesus forgave you, Anne. Now it's time for you to let go. And in that process, I had to tell my 2 girls that were beginning high school. I had to tell them what their mother had done. And it was a challenge for me. I was afraid that they would do to me what my small town did to me, and that was ostracize me. And in that process, I learned that my girls were more forgiving. So that was part of my healing, was to listen to my youngest say to me, "Wow, Mom, what better parent can you give that baby than Jesus?" And I thought, wow, she's 13. That's an incredible gift for me. Thank you, God, that my daughter could see something that I couldn't in this mess that I made. It was an incredible experience to share this with my children, but I need to know that it was through Jesus' love, through his forgiveness, through his grace, that I could get to the point where I was. And I believe that each day that I go through this, and it is a process, that it is through only his grace that I can be healed.
You've just heard Anne's powerful testimony of how abortion affected her, a lifelong pain that she had with abortion, the inability to bond with her children. If that sounds like you, we want to encourage you to call our 24-hour toll-free helpline right now. There's a woman there at the other end of the line that is willing to pray with you, to listen to your story, and to offer you hope. You know, Alan, I was listening to that with Anne's story of how she was talking about she never realized how that abortion would affect her in the future, and especially her inability to bond with her children in the future.
Mm-hmm. That's so common. It doesn't happen to everyone, but one of the lies is, well, you're not ready to have a child now. You can have a child later when you're ready to have a child, and then you'll have this happiness with your child. But what often happens is when the woman has that second child, the memories of the abortion flood in and steal all the joy that should be there in a pregnancy and childbirth, and that experience